The lawyer whispered, "Are you sure?" She nodded. The courtroom buzzed. No one understood why she'd agree so quickly. What they didn't realize was that the real victory wasn't in the settlement, it was what came next. For 18 months, Evelyn Reed had fought her soon-to-be ex-husband, tech mogul Julian Reed, in a grueling public divorce battle. He'd offered millions, but demanded her silence, painting her as a gold digger to the world. Today, his lawyers presented a final, insulting offer. A single lump sum, a fraction of what the community property laws suggested, in exchange for her forfeiting all claims to his future empire and signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. The judge leaned forward, expecting a fiery rebuttal. Her own legal team held their breath, ready for war. But Evelyn simply smiled, a small, private, terrifying smile, and said, "I accept." A gasp that rippled through the wood-paneled room was a physical thing. Julian's smug triumph was palpable. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd bought her silence and his freedom. He had no idea that in that moment of perceived weakness, Evelyn had just sprung the trap she'd spent 2 years meticulously building. Her agreement wasn't surrender. It was the detonation of a carefully laid charge, and the real trial was only just beginning. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. The polished mahogany of the defense table felt cold under Evelyn Reed's fingertips, a stark contrast to the stifling, anxious heat filling the courtroom. The air smelled of old paper, lemon-scented wood polish, and the cloying, expensive cologne her husband, Julian, had taken to wearing, a scent of success that now made her stomach turn. For 18 grueling months, this room had been a theater of war. Today, it would become the stage for her greatest performance. Her own lawyer, Michael, a seasoned pit bull in a $5,000 suit, shifted beside her, his knuckles white where he gripped a pen. Across the aisle, Julian's trio of attorneys looked like a wall of smug certainty, their client the gleaming trophy at their center. Julian Reed, the visionary founder of OmniCorp, didn't look at Evelyn. He studied his own reflection in the glossy tabletop, a faint, victorious smile playing on his lips. He'd already won in his mind. The public narrative was sealed. The brilliant innovator weighed down by the mercenary wife. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Reed, in a final gesture of goodwill to conclude these protracted proceedings, wishes to offer a settlement," began David Chen, Julian's lead counsel. His voice was a smooth, practiced instrument of persuasion. He outlined the terms with the solemn gravitas of a man bestowing a gift, a one-time lump sum payment of $5 million, no alimony. A complete and permanent relinquishment of any claim, past, present, or future, to Mr. Reed's stake in OmniCorp Technologies, its subsidiaries, or any future ventures. And a binding non-disclosure agreement, the language of which was so comprehensive it would forbid Mrs. Reed from ever speaking, writing, or implying anything about their marriage, their personal lives, the divorce process, or the internal operations of OmniCorp. The number hung in the air, not as a figure of wealth, but as an insult. Julian's empire was valued at over $400 million. Community property laws in their state suggested a very different division. This was a slap, dressed in legal parchment. It was a payment for her silence, for her disappearance, a buyout of a nuisance. Michael was on his feet before Chen fully sat down. "Your Honor, this is not a gesture of goodwill. It is an act of breathtaking bad faith. After systematically obscuring assets through a network of offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg, after attempting to devalue my client's foundational contributions to the very company in question, Mr. Reed now offers a pittance in exchange for her eternal silence. We reject this outright. We demand full forensic accounting and proceed to trial on the matter of the hidden R and D streams alone." The judge, an older woman with weary eyes behind silver spectacles, peered at Evelyn. "Mrs. Reed, counsel's passion is noted, but this is your life. A trial on the matters your attorney suggests would be complex, lengthy, and emotionally devastating. It could stretch on for another 2 years. You've heard the offer. What is your wish?" All eyes swung to her. The court artist's pencil hovered. Julian finally turned his head, meeting her gaze for the first time that day. His expression wasn't cruel, it was dismissive. It was the look he'd given a junior executive presenting a flawed proposal. He expected her to fight. He was prepared for her tears, her rage, her desperate negotiation. He had battalions of lawyers and bottomless funds to grind her down. That was the war he was ready for. Evelyn let the silence stretch, feeling its weight. She thought of the flash drive buried in a safety deposit box, not of wedding photos, but of financial audits. She remembered the night 2 years ago, not of a discovered text message from a lover, but of a discovered server log from his private office. She had come looking for evidence of an affair and had instead found the ghostly digital footprints of Project Aegis. She recognized the code architecture. It was based on a framework they'd sketched together in their garage days, a tool for public good. He had warped it, weaponized it, and buried its funding in accounts she was never meant to see. Michael leaned in close, his whisper a sharp, urgent breath in the quiet courtroom. "Are you sure?" he hissed, not following the script they had nervously rehearsed. "Evelyn, we can fight this. We have the offshore leads. We can expose him." She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, her eyes never leaving Julian's. Her face was a placid lake. Inside, a detonation sequence had reached 0. "I accept." The words, clear and calm, fell into the room like a glass shattering on stone. For a full 3 seconds, there was dead silence. Then, the courtroom erupted in a collective, stupefied exhale, a rush of whispers, shuffling feet, and a sharp crack of the judge's gavel. Michael sank into his chair as if his bones had dissolved, staring at her in utter betrayal. Julian's smug composure flickered, replaced for a heartbeat by pure, uncomprehending shock before settling into a triumphant, radiant glee. He'd done it. He won. She was broken, after all. Just another cost of doing business, now efficiently resolved. "Mrs. Reed," the judge said slowly, peering over her glasses, "I must be certain you understand the permanence of this. You are waiving rights that, in my estimation, are substantially more valuable than what is being offered. You are agreeing to never speak of these matters again." Evelyn stood. She smoothed the simple navy blue dress she'd chosen for today, a uniform of capitulation. "I understand completely, Your Honor. I wish to end this, today." Her voice was steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil around her. The procedural formalities that followed were a blur. The signing of documents, the judge's final pronouncement. The marriage of Evelyn and Julian Reed was dissolved, the settlement terms made binding by the power of the court. Julian's team practically vibrated with victory, clapping him on the back. As they filed out, Julian paused beside her table. He didn't look at Michael, who was glaring daggers at the floor. He looked only at Evelyn. "It's the smart move, Evie," he said, his voice low, almost kind with condescension. "A clean break. You can be comfortable now, no more drama." He leaned in slightly. "It really is for the best." Evelyn offered him the same small, gentle smile she'd given the judge. It didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, Julian," she said softly. "A clean break." He left then, surrounded by his sycophants, already talking about the press release and the stock bump this certainty would bring. Evelyn gathered her single leather folder. Michael wouldn't look at her. "I hope you know what you've done," he muttered, his voice thick with professional shame. "He robbed you blind, and you just thanked him for it." "Goodbye, Michael," Evelyn said. "Send the final bill to my new address." She walked out of the courthouse alone, ignoring the shouted questions from the few reporters who'd bothered to show up for what they assumed would be a non-event. The headlines wrote themselves already. Reed divorce SETTLES, wife TAKES fraction, FADES away. OMNICRP CEO freed from GOLDDIGGER. She let the narrative solidify. It was the kindling for the fire she would light. Her destination was not the temporary, luxurious hotel she'd used during the proceedings, but a modest, secure apartment in a quiet, unassuming building she'd leased 18 months ago under the name of an LLC she controlled, Athena Holdings. The final piece of the divorce settlement had been transferred. Not just the money, but her freedom from any tether to Julian Reed. The NDA bound her past. It said nothing about her future. Inside the apartment, sparsely furnished and lined with unpacked boxes of books and records, the silence was profound. She stood in the center of the living room, breathing it in. The performance was over. The mask could come off. For the first time all day, her shoulders slumped. A single hot tear tracked through the expertly applied makeup she'd worn as armor. It was not a tear of defeat, but of sheer, draining relief. Phase 1 was complete. She walked to a plain desk, booted up a laptop not connected to any cloud service she'd ever used with Julian. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, accessing a series of encrypted partitions. She opened a file tree. The master folder was labeled Project Phoenix. Inside, subfolders were meticulously organized. Financial ANOMALIS, Project Aegis Data, Ethical VIOL8EONS, Media Strategy. She clicked on the one labeled Phase 1, THE Settlement. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a scanned copy of the signed agreement she'd just executed. The second was a memo she had written to herself, dated the day she discovered the full scope of Julian's deceptions. The memo's subject line was, "The Trap of Greed." Julian believes every person has a price, and that price is always monetary. He believes leverage is about what you can take. He does not understand that true leverage is about what you are willing to walk away from. By offering a bad settlement, he demonstrates his core weakness. He thinks the only battlefield is the one where he holds all the money. He will mistake strategic withdrawal for surrender. The moment the settlement is final, his guard drops. His legal fortress is built to repel an assault from a spousal claim. It is not built to withstand an independent whistleblower with no financial stake in his company, armed with evidence of crimes that have nothing to do with alimony. Step 1. Let him win the divorce. It is the only way to lose him forever. Evelyn highlighted the last sentence of the memo. She then created a new folder. She labeled it Phase 2, The Reckoning. She dragged her first set of files into it, a condensed, bulletproof dossier for the Securities and Exchange Commission, detailing the fraudulent inflation of Omni Corp's valuation using the hidden offshore funds. She attached a draft email to a specific Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist at the Financial Chronicle. She allowed herself one moment, one single, shaky breath in the quiet of her new, free apartment. She looked at the signed settlement on the screen, the symbol of her apparent defeat. Then she looked at the send button hovering over the email to the SEC. Her expression, reflected in the dark monitor, hardened into something utterly resolute. The tear was gone. The performance was over. The war was just beginning. The silence in Evelyn's apartment was a living thing, a stark contrast to the constant hum of litigation that had filled her life for so long. It was a silence she cultivated, a clean white canvas upon which she would now paint her retaliation. The first week was a study in deliberate invisibility. She let the media narrative solidify, watching with detached interest as the business channels celebrated Julian's clean exit and the gossip blogs pitied her quiet defeat. A single, tasteful no comment from her released through a neutral third party was the only ripple she allowed. She was a stone sunk in a pond, and the world moved on, assuming she was settling into a comfortable, forgotten obscurity funded by her pittance. Julian, predictably, celebrated his unburdening with a lavish, star-studded, Horizon's Edge party at his new Pacific Heights mansion. Drone footage on social media showed him by an infinity pool, glass raised, surrounded by investors and new admirers, the very picture of a man unshackled. Evelyn watched a clip on a tablet, her face expressionless. His smile was wider, looser than she'd seen in years. He believed he was free. He believed he had purchased his peace. The trap was sprung, and he didn't even feel the steel on his ankle. It was time to load the weapons she had spent 2 years quietly forging. Her first meeting was not in a law office, but in a private back room of a nondescript university library. Across from her sat Sarah Chen, no relation to Julian's lawyer, a former federal prosecutor turned high-stakes ethics consultant. She was the only person from the old life Evelyn had trusted enough to confide in during the darkest days of discovery. "He threw a party," Evelyn said, her voice flat, pushing a manila folder across the worn wooden table. "Of course he did," Sarah replied, opening the folder. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, scanned the first page. It wasn't about love affairs or personal cruelty. It was a flowchart, linking shell companies in the British Virgin Islands to capital injections timed suspiciously before Omni Corp's Series D funding round. "This is the offshore trail Michael was barking about in court." "Michael was barking up the wrong tree," Evelyn corrected, tapping a specific line on the page. "He wanted to use it to argue for a larger settlement to prove hidden marital assets. That would have tied it to the divorce, made it a he said she said about money. This," she said, her finger moving to a separate, annotated ledger, "is not a marital asset. This is securities fraud." The Luxembourg Holdings entity didn't just hold money. It was used to purchase Omnicorp stock at a prearranged, inflated price to deceive the lead venture capital firm. I have the email chain where Julian directs the fund manager. It's dated 3 months after he told me the company was in a valley, and we needed to tighten our personal belts. Sarah let out a low whistle. This is a whistleblower case. The divorce settlement, you took the buyout to sever any financial interest. Exactly. If I were still pursuing a claim to Omnicorp, anything I disclosed could be seen as a tactic to depress the stock for my own benefit. Now I have no stake. I'm just a citizen with evidence of a crime. The NDA I signed covers the marriage and the divorce. It says nothing about pre-existing federal statutes. He paid for my silence on our personal life. He didn't, and legally couldn't, pay for my silence on wire fraud. Sarah's professional composure broke into a grin of pure, predatory admiration. He played checkers. You're playing 4D chess. What's the other folder? Evelyn slid a second, thicker dossier across the table. This one was marked with a simple, chilling code name, Aegis. This is why I really left. The affairs were a symptom. This was the cancer. For the next hour, Evelyn walked Sarah through Project Aegis. It wasn't just a surveillance tool. It was a predictive policing and social credit platform designed to be sold to foreign regimes Julian had publicly criticized. She had schematics, internal chat logs where engineers expressed ethical concerns that were swiftly silenced, and budget transfers showing R&D funds diverted from their publicly touted green tech initiative. She had even found a test server, innocuously named, where she'd seen it classify protesters in a simulated environment as primary targets for neutralization. My God, Evelyn, Sarah breathed, her face pale. This is export control violation territory, possibly worse. He built a weapon with our money, Sarah. Money I helped him make. That's not a divorce issue. That's a human issue. Evelyn's voice was steady, but a deep, cold fury vibrated beneath it. I tried to talk to him about it. He told me I didn't understand the new geopolitical landscape, that my sentimentality was a liability. That was the night I knew the man I married was gone. Sarah closed the folders, her hands resting on them as if they were sacred texts. The strategy is sound. We go to the regulators first, SEC for the fraud. Then, depending on their traction, we go to the Department of Commerce and maybe state for Aegis. We need a journalistic partner to shape the public narrative simultaneously. Otherwise, Julian will bury it in legal jargon and countersuits. I have the journalist, Evelyn said. Maya Rodriguez at the Financial Chronicle. She's been digging at the edges of Omnicorp's valuation for a year. She just needs the central pillar. The plan was set in motion with the quiet precision of a military campaign. Evelyn, through Sarah's secure channels, filed an official whistleblower tip with the SEC's Office of the Whistleblower, submitting a 90-page dossier with indexed evidence. The following day, an encrypted packet arrived in Maya Rodriguez's inbox from a secure Dropbox, containing a narrative summary and the most damning, non-classifiable pieces of the Aegis project, enough to raise urgent, public questions, but not enough to compromise the official investigation. The detonation, when it came, was not a single blast, but a converging wave. It started with a cryptic, front-page headline in the Financial Chronicle. Omnicorp's horizon, built on shifting sands. The article didn't mention Evelyn Reed. It focused on internal documents and financial records, showing troubling discrepancies in pre-funding valuations, and pointed to the mysterious Luxembourg entity. It asked questions Julian would have to answer, to his board, to his new investors. The tremor became a quake 48 hours later, when the SEC confirmed it had opened a formal investigation into Omnicorp's fundraising practices based on substantive evidence provided by a whistleblower. The stock, which had enjoyed a gentle rise post-divorce, plummeted 22% in a single afternoon. Julian's world, so perfectly ordered and arrogantly controlled, began to crack. His PR team scrambled, issuing statements about full cooperation and baseless allegations from a disgruntled former associate. But the word whistleblower had a specific, potent weight that disgruntled ex-wife did not. It shifted the framing from a personal spat to a matter of public trust. Then Maya Rodriguez published her second piece. This one was titled The Two Faces of OmniCorp, Green Tech for Show, Dark Tech for Sale. It laid out in chilling detail the existence of Project Aegis, its capabilities, and its intended markets. It quoted the silenced engineers. It showed the budget diversions. This article did mention Evelyn Reed, but not as the source. It mentioned her as the former operations manager who had left the company amidst concerns over strategic direction 18 months prior, a matter of public record. The implication was a cannon shot across Julian's bow. The public, and more importantly, Congress, now saw a pattern: fraud and ethical rot. Evelyn broke her public silence, but not on the terms Julian had tried to dictate. She granted one interview to a respected veteran tech journalist known for hard questions. She sat in her simple apartment, dressed in a professional blazer, a world away from the couture of the courtroom. She did not mention the divorce. She did not mention the affair. She spoke about her career. "I helped build OmniCorp from a kernel of an idea in a garage," she said, her gaze steady into the camera. "Our original charter was about connection, about empowerment. What I witnessed in its final years was a fundamental drift from those principles. My departure was not personal. It was professional. It was ethical." When you see the core mission of something you helped create being subverted, you have a responsibility to act, not for personal gain, but for the integrity of the work itself. She was framed as a founder, a whistleblower, a person of conscience. The narrative had completely, irrevocably flipped. Part 2 ended with Julian Reed not at a party, but in a crisis war room at OmniCorp headquarters at midnight. The air was thick with panic and the stale smell of cold coffee. His new lawyers, corporate litigators out of their depth in a scandal of this magnitude, argued frantically. His screen showed the stock ticker, a relentless, bloody downward scroll. A breaking news alert flashed. FBI CONFIRMS inquiry into OMNICOR peace export controls following Chronicle report. He stared at a paused image on another monitor, a still from Evelyn's interview, her calm, resolute face, the placid lake he had mistaken for emptiness. He saw the intelligence in her eyes now, the strategic depth he had spent years willfully ignoring. He had bought her silence on the story of the wronged wife. He had, in his catastrophic arrogance, never considered she might have a bigger, more devastating story to tell. The real victory wasn't in the settlement. It was what came next. And it was here, crashing down upon him with the force of a tsunami. The war room at OmniCorp was a tomb dressed in glass and steel. The panoramic view of the city's glittering skyline, once a symbol of Julian's dominion, now felt like a taunt, a panorama of everything he was about to lose. His new legal counsel, a grim-faced specialist in corporate crisis management, had just finished outlining the cascading failures. The SEC's civil case was a certainty. The Department of Commerce inquiry into Project Aegis was a spear aimed at the company's heart. Institutional investors were filing lawsuits for fraud. The board, those loyal sycophants he'd handpicked, were on a conference call in the next room, deciding his fate without him. "The whistleblower protections are a fortress, Julian," the lawyer said, massaging his temple. "We cannot touch her directly. Any attempt to sue for NDA violation is dead on arrival. She's exposing alleged federal crimes. The narrative is locked. She's Joan of Arc and you're the burning stake." Julian felt a tremor in his hand, a foreign sensation he quelled by clenching it into a fist. His eyes were fixed on a single sheet of paper, a formal couriered letter from the OmniCorp Board of Directors, requesting his immediate and temporary step-down as CEO pending the resolution of the investigations. Temporary. He knew the language of corporate coups. It was permanent. They were sacrificing the king to save the castle. "Get her on the phone," Julian said, his voice a dry rasp. "I strongly advise against any direct contact. It could be construed as intimidation of a witness. Get her on the phone." The quiet violence in his tone cut through the room. The lawyer, after a moment's hesitation, pulled out a secure mobile and through a series of intermediaries made the connection. He placed the phone on the table, put it on speaker, and gave a stiff nod. The line clicked. There was no greeting. "Evelyn," Julian's voice sounded strange to his own ears, stripped of its usual easy confidence. "Julian." Her reply was neutral, clean of emotion. It was the voice of a colleague, a distant one. A beat of heavy silence pulsed through the speaker. He could imagine her in that sparse apartment, perfectly calm. The image fueled a desperate rage. "You ruined me. You planned this. The settlement, the quiet acceptance. It was all a trick." The words trick sounded childish, inadequate for the architectural demolition she had executed. "It was a strategy," she corrected, her tone matter of fact. "You presented me with a binary choice. Fight you for money in a system you rigged with delay and distraction, or take a payoff and disappear. You never considered a third option." "The NDA bound me from speaking as your wife," she interrupted, and he could hear the faint, cold smile in her voice. "It did not bind me from acting as a citizen. You paid for my silence on our personal life, Julian. You thought that was the only story I had to tell. You never understood that the story of your fraud, of your monstrous little project, was infinitely more important, and I had no price for that." His mind raced, trying to find a lever, a pressure point. "You helped build this company. You're destroying your own legacy." "No," she said, and the word was like a guillotine blade dropping. "I'm saving what little of its soul is left. I'm salvaging my own legacy from the wreckage of yours. You built the weapon, Julian. I just took away your license to fire it." He slumped into a chair, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a hollow, terrifying comprehension. This was the reckoning he had never seen coming. Not from a competitor, not from the market, but from the person he had most thoroughly underestimated. He had seen her as an emotional variable to be managed, a cost on a spreadsheet. She had seen him as a system to be analyzed, a problem to be solved. "What do you want?" he whispered, the question a white flag. "The money, the company, I can. We can undo the settlement. I'll give you whatever you..." Her laugh was short, sharp, and utterly devoid of humor. "You still don't get it. I don't want your money. I don't want a seat at your poisoned table. I wanted you to be stopped. And you are." The line went dead. The formal end came with brutal, bureaucratic speed. The board accepted his permanent resignation. To avoid total corporate implosion, OmniCorp entered into a deferred prosecution agreement with the government. The terms were staggering: a 9-figure penalty, the complete dismantling and surrender of all Project Aegis assets and code, the installation of a federal monitor, and a total restructuring of the board. The SEC, leveraging Evelyn's evidence, secured a massive settlement for the defrauded investors. And as the whistleblower whose information had led directly to the successful prosecution, Evelyn was entitled to a percentage of that recovery. The letter from the U.S. Treasury arrived at her apartment. The sum was several multiples of the divorce settlement. It was clean, public, and hers alone, a reward for integrity, not a payoff for silence. A year later, Evelyn stood backstage at the Metropolitan Convention Center, the low hum of 1,000 voices vibrating through the floor. She adjusted the lapel of her tailored emerald green suit, a color of growth, of renewal. On the monitor, she watched the host conclude her introduction. "A leader who redefines what it means to win, to rebuild, and to lead with conscience. Please welcome the founder of Phoenix Advisory, Evelyn Reed." The applause was not polite, it was a roar. She walked onto the stage, not to the somber wood of a courtroom, but into a blaze of light. She shook the host's hand and stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, mostly women, but many men too, entrepreneurs, investors, activists. "They say you should never look back," she began, her voice clear and carrying through the perfect silence that followed. "But sometimes you have to, not with nostalgia but with clarity, to understand the terrain you crossed, the traps you avoided, and the ones you had to spring yourself." She spoke not of betrayal, but of systemic blindness, not of revenge, but of responsibility. She talked about the seductive danger of believing your own mythology, and the corrosive power of a silence that is purchased rather than earned. "In any complex system," she said, leaning into the mic, "the most profound vulnerability is often the one the designers are too proud to see. They fortify the castle walls but leave the foundation unguarded, believing it's too obvious, too basic to be a target. True power isn't in never appearing weak. It's an understanding that sometimes The most potent strategic move looks, to the arrogant eye, exactly like surrender. It's the retreat that allows you to choose the true battlefield. She spoke for 20 minutes about ethical frameworks in tech, about building companies with transparency baked into their code. She was introduced as Evelyn Reed, founder and CEO, her past with Omni Corp a noted part of her pedigree, not the definition of it. As she concluded, the applause was thunderous, a physical wave of affirmation. Back in her private green room, she declined the champagne, asking for sparkling water instead. Her assistant handed her a tablet. On it was a single news headline from the Business Wire. Former Omnicorp CEO Julian Reed accepts plea deal, sentencing scheduled for next month. The article detailed his admission to one count of securities fraud in exchange for the dropping of other charges. He would serve time, likely in a low-security facility, and pay fines that would obliterate what remained of his personal fortune. His name was now a cautionary tale. Next to the article on the screen was an open email. The sender was a venture capital firm that had cut ties with Julian early. The subject line read, "Thank you for changing the game." Evelyn took a slow sip of water, the bubbles crisp on her tongue. She felt no blazing triumph, no cathartic joy. Instead, she felt a profound and solid peace. The scale was balanced. The sentence, both legal and moral, had been delivered. She had not just won a settlement or a whistleblower award. She had won back her name, her narrative, and her future. She had turned the weapon of his disdain, the assumption that she was a passive prize or a manageable cost, into the very instrument of his downfall. She closed the tablet, finished her water, and smiled at her assistant. "Ready for the next meeting?" she asked. The past was a closed case. The future of her own design was waiting.